What is up? We are back. Episode 2 of JT Uncut. This is a K-State podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on the pod today. I want to give a quick shout out to everybody that asked questions in the last episode and in this one. Folks, we got like triple the questions we had episode 1, so we're going to speed through some of the other stuff to get to the meat and potatoes here. There's a lot of questions coming in, and I'm excited to talk about that. But before I do, let me give you a quick, general, hey, subscribe, folks. It helps me out immensely. I hope you appreciate the pod. I hope you appreciate the work I've been doing. Growing this channel, working on some K-State stuff, and providing content each and every day to the best of my ability. I know I'm not perfect with it, but I do appreciate those who jump in and support. And we're closing in 3,000 subs. I'm getting a K-State cat script tattoo on the left thigh, so be sure and hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss that. But in K-State news, we'll start out for those of you listening for the first time, the outline of this show, I tend to do a what's going on with K-State, then a what's going on with me, then mailbag questions, outro, etc. It's kind of that picture of how to go. And if you're interested in asking questions, hit me up on Twitter. The next episode I post anytime over the weekend, and I'll ask for questions. Definitely be in on that roll call because it's a good time, and I appreciate all those who do. Jumping in here, K-State has added 2 players to the transfer portal this week with Alabama transfer Jashawn Ross and UNM transfer receiver Caleb Medford. Jashawn Ross, an edge rusher at Alabama. A kid that was an elite prospect coming out of high school, goes to Alabama. This was a dude where Nick Saban personally came to the Overland Park area to meet with the kid, offer him the scholarship. So it's kind of one where you're like, all right, fellas, we got to tuck the tail here. We're not going to win this one. As much as I love Chris Klieman, much as I love K-State, it's like, all right, Saban, one of the greatest of all time, comes to offer you a scholarship in person. That's going to be the writing on the wall right there. Not necessarily for me or for, certain people, but for Jashawn Ross, that was enough. And then Saban retires after his freshman season. Now it's Kalen DeBoer. Didn't quite work out. I don't think the transition was good enough for Jashawn Ross. Obviously jumps to Kansas State, which is a blessing for us, but definitely someone you want to see come back home. This is a kid that went to Liberty North, elite pass rusher coming out of high school, a dude that can absolutely jump off the screen. True freshman, redshirted this season, had some accolades even within the program as a most developed type dude at Alabama. He's going to be a big-time pass rusher for Kansas State. I just wonder when. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to jump to Kansas State, be the starter consistently, and have 15 sacks this season. I'm not going to be that guy out of the rip. But it's also not something you can just put in the back burner and say that's not going to happen. He is an elite talent. It is a big win for Kansas State. Jashawn Ross coming back to K-State, I picture him perfectly like I see Tobias Insomni, where he's a speed guy, but obviously this dude has some more size too. 6'4", 240. This is a big dude, a guy that is a prototypical NFL-sized defensive end, and someone that absolutely had that upside at Alabama. He's going to have the same thing here. It's essentially that he went somewhere out of high school, chose someone else over K-State, then comes back after redshirting. That is an awesome thing. Developing with one of the best programs in college football, comes back to Kansas State. It's going to be a big addition for Jashawn Ross. What his impact looks like as a true freshman, or as a redshirt freshman, I'm not sure. All I know is that K-State's got to find him ways to get on the field. Caleb Medford, a receiver from UNM, the UNM Lobos. Shout out to my dad and that side of the family, all diehard UNM fans. 18 catches for 336 yards and 3 touchdowns there last season. Year before that had 30 and 551 and 2 scores. Definitely a dude with some upside, but I like what Kansas State's approach has been. Even if I know a lot of people are kind of hitting the panic button saying, oh crap, this is a situation where you're not getting an elite wide receiver 1. Folks, you already retained your receiver 1. You got Jace Brown back. What I think Kansas State is doing is this. You have an elite receiver. Nobody's going to doubt that about Jace Brown. Most receiving yards since Tyler Lockett was at Kansas State. Or maybe it's a Byron Pringle thing. Shout out Byron Pringle one time if I butchered that. Love that dude to death. Miss him on the Chiefs, to be perfectly honest with you. Liked him a lot. But definitely a big thing for that. Like, the approach was retain Jace Brown, get a couple of guys that have wide receiver 1 upside, but aren't going to sit here and say, like, okay, obviously you want the best receiver available. The likelihood is they're probably going to the power 2. I still think it's more of a power 4, but realistically, it's a situation where Caleb Medford could have incredible upside. Jerron Tibbs came on down the stretch at Purdue, looked really, really sharp. And then I am a big fan of Jaron Bradley. I think a lot of people look at him and say, well, can he get to that ceiling? Can he do this? Can he do this? Seeing him work out with those NFL trainers this offseason has me excited. So I think that K-State will find a good opportunity there. I think realistically what it'll end up being is it'll probably be Bradley on one side out wide, and then I think Tibbs on the other side out wide, and then you have some combination of Jace Brown in the slot. Could they move Jace outside? Absolutely. He's just so dynamic in the middle of the field that I think Jace Brown's going to be there. Then you're going to get a jumbo receiver, tight end type dude in Lincoln Cure, and you'll get the football to Dylan Edwards as much as possible in any way as possible. So I feel good about where we're at there in terms of skill position. We'll see what happens, how much they've added, but definitely a cool thing to see K-State identifying the right talents in the transfer portal. Moving on to the next thing in terms of K-State news, Jordan Spicer. I don't know if it's Spicer, Spicer. I'm still not, I'm not a day one of women's college basketball yet. I'm getting into it because this ladies team is legit. But Jeff Mittie recruited a 5-star this season. She jumped from number 13 on the On3 industry rankings now to number 6. There are 5 players ranked higher than her in the entire class. This is incredible. The 2025 prospect is going to be a big deal for Kansas State. A 5-star freshman under Jeff Mittie. Excited to see what happens there. Another topic I want to talk about is Deuce Vaughn. There was a clip this week posted with Kay Adams, who is just incredible. Love Kay Adams. Everything about her except for the fact she went to Mizzou. Had a podcast episode, I think it's the Up and Adams show, with Darren Sproles this week. And she basically said, hey, Darren, who reminds you of you? What NFL player reminds you of you? And he said Deuce Vaughn. And he goes, the only thing is they have to get him the football. Dallas, you have to give Deuce Vaughn the football and let him play. They gave it to him in Week 18 in a meaningless game, Week 17 in a meaningless game for the Cowboys. What'd he do? Averaged 7 yards a carry on 6 carries, 6 for 42, or 6 for 37, whatever the case was. Deuce still looks like the same dude running behind Cooper Beebe. He understands how good he can be with his size. And I just don't know. It's just crazy. I mean, it's the same leadership that has Jerry Jones on its council. Like, this is a group where you're not expecting them to do the right thing. Mike McCarthy should not be back. He will be back, I'm sure. And if not, they'll try to hire Bill Belichick. It won't work. Basically, whatever's going to happen, it's going to hit the fan. It'll be in Dallas. They need to play Deuce Vaughn. They need to use Deuce Vaughn. Rico Dowdle, we ain't talking about a star. And I'm not sitting here saying he's not good. All I'm saying is that Dallas does not have a good enough established running back to not use a by committee of backs. They don't. And the fact that Deuce hasn't cracked that rotation more is coaching malpractice from everybody involved. And it baffles me that he doesn't play more. So what I'm hoping for, this is selfish because I have my own thing, and I think for his career. Personally, I hope that someone trades for him. I don't know if they'll trade for him, if he'll get put to the practice squad, whatever the case is. Someone needs to claim him off waivers, whatever the case is in the NFL. My hope is that it's Kansas City, because Andy Reid would do wonders with a gadget-type guy like Deuce Vaughn. Deuce can be a running back 1. Isaiah Pacheco's banged up. I think they're going to draft a running back this year. We'll see what happens there. But the point of what I'm saying is you need a skill position dude. You can get the ball in space. He can be elite, dynamic. That's Deuce Vaughn. Get a smart offensive coordinator that knows how to use his guys in the right way. He will thrive. Whether that be a Kyle Shanahan or a Sean McVay, Andy Reid, whoever it needs to be, that's where I want to see him. Because I don't think Dallas is going to do it right. That's all I'm going to say about that. But moving right into the mailbag, we've got a lot of great questions this week. I'll preface it, say there's a lot of K-State men's basketball talk. I'm going to try to kind of filter all those questions into one answer. Because I think there's a lot of stuff that's here there of what to describe in that. There's some stuff about Gene Taylor, some stuff about K-State women's basketball, baseball. Then there's some personal stuff about me. There's going to be a lot of fun things to discuss. But I'll start off with the general one from my guy, Zach Zumwalt. Essentially is this. K-State men's basketball. Why? Great question, Zach. And I'll tell you what, I don't know. I think there's a million different things I could say, but to keep this one a little bit general before I move into it a little bit deeper, K-State men's basketball is in an interesting spot where you have a top 5 roster in terms of money in college basketball, in terms of NIL. And I know that people get mad at Coleman Hawkins because he's making $2 million. Guys, Coleman Hawkins didn't pay himself $2 million to come play here. He took the best offer on the table, wants to play good college basketball, he's doing his best. The issue is the roster you've built. I love the individuals. I think there's some individuals on this team that I really enjoy watching. I like watching Max Jones play. I know a lot of people don't. I like watching Brendan Housen step out and shoot threes. I like Coleman Hawkins being a true 3-level guy. I think Doug McDaniel's speed is elite. I think Buddy Rich is one of the most exciting players in college basketball. The issue is I don't like watching the team as a whole. They are not a good basketball team. There's good individuals. They do not gel. They do not jive. They do not work together. The coaching staff doesn't put them in positions to be successful. And it's at a point where the team is not very good. The individuals are there. There's people in the program that I like, even on the coaching staff, that I'm like, wow, this person's smart. This person does a great job. This person's this. Same thing with the staff. Same thing with the roster. This guy excels here. This guy excels here. We need to do this. We need to do this. And it all comes back to the fact that, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the meme of, like, it's kind of it'd be a weird deep cut to describe audio only, but there's a meme of basically there's 2 sides of a spectrum, or 3 sides of a spectrum, where in the middle it's like 80 to 90% of people say, that's not fair. There's 1,000 different outcomes of football games and basketball games that decide a thing. And then on one side it says the team with the best players will win the game. And then the other side, it's the team with the best players will win the game. One person's really stupid for saying it, one person's really smart for saying it. The middle people are frustrated saying that's not how it goes. At some point, the best team will win the game. Kansas State does not have the best team. That's their issue. I mean, you can say it's coaching, and it is to an extent. You can say it's guys not buying in. You can say it's that. I'll talk about it a little bit more with other questions here, but essentially this, to get it off my chest, Kansas State men's basketball is just not in a good spot. They're not trending positively. They're not. I mean, there's the statement that Coach Tang made this week about how we want to get to a spot where we have 5 David Gassons, guys that have been in the program, know what they're doing. We're not exactly in a spot where I can vouch for you, Coach Tang, only because every guy that you've had that stuck around has resulted in 1 David Gasson, because you're looking elsewhere. And maybe it's internal. Maybe the other guys didn't want to stay. Like, I had heard there was an offer on the table for Cam Carter. I can't report this because I don't know any of this stuff. I heard there was an alley that he could return. And I heard that the staff kind of went a different way. I don't know that for a fact, and I'm not going to sit here and say I do. It could also be Cam Carter saying, nah, man, I'm going home. I'm not staying here. Because I also had heard that, where it's, hey, LSU was talking to Cam Carter earlier, there's this and that. There's 1,000 different ways you could say it, but the actions that Coach Tang has displayed in terms of how he's built his roster from season to season has not lined up with the way that they're playing college basketball. You're not really at a point where you want to develop the program, I'm sure, but you're not putting in the necessary steps to keep guys around. And when I say that, I'll move on from K-State basketball in just a sec, folks. I know this is probably your average suffering to hear, but my thing with K-State basketball is this. If you want guys to stick around, you have to give them the leash to be young guys and make mistakes. You can't pull them when they struggle immediately. Like, you can. I'm not a basketball coach. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but when you put David Castillo out there and he goes, minus 12 in 8 minutes, and you pull him, you don't let him play again. That is all that stat sheet's going to say about it. He's going to get the experience. He's going to have to move on to a different day, hope for the best. Then he puts up his season-high 18 points, looks really, really good at home in Manhattan, doesn't play a single minute against St. John's, or plays like 2 minutes against St. John's. These things do not inspire confidence of guys wanting to be used the right way. Buddy Rich is a good example. I know there's some stuff going on there. I don't know what's going on there, but it sounds like he's in the doghouse now. Coach Tang, declined to answer a comment about Buddy Rich. I think my guy Ryan Gilbert asked and said, hey, any thoughts playing Buddy here? He didn't record a single minute. Coach Tang paused and said, I'm not answering that question. I like the guy. I like Coach Tang. I think he's a good guy. How do you want people to react to this comment? You are officially choosing not to answer a question that everybody wants to know. Do you have an alley to clarify it? Do you have something to say that clears it up? Do you have this, whatever? I get that maybe he's biting his tongue because it might not come out the best way. But to keep a guy like Buddy Rich around, what do you have to do? Let him play. Let him get experience. I can count on one hand the amount of guys that will stay on this roster at the end of the season. I think maybe even less than that. I think you're going to keep Taj because Taj loves being here, love Taj Manning. I think you keep Brendan Hausen because it sounds like this is his home for now, like this is the place he wants to be. And then you take a gamble at a couple other guys. I hope you keep Buddy. I hope you keep David Castillo. I think he does stick around. But are you going to keep a guy like Doug McDaniel? I don't think so. Are you going to keep guys around the league that are just, here for 1 or 2 years that are elite at their own places, come here, and they struggle? How are you going to keep that culture from keeping guys out of the transfer portal? Those are the questions I don't know now. So that's my theory about Kansas State, why they're struggling. Could they win games? Yes, they're not. At this point, they're 7-8, and it's not a good basketball team to watch. That's just my thought about that. I'm not going to be the biggest negativity guy and, diving on Tang and how everybody hates this and that and this and that, or the roster deserves this and that. I'm not going to do any of that. We'll talk about that as we go along further because there will be more Coach Tang questions in this mailbag, but as of right now, they're not a good basketball team, and that's all you can say about it. They're not a good basketball team. You can chalk it up to a million different reasons. Until they're a good basketball team, it's tough to justify anything. That's all I can say. So whatever path you need to take to get to the spot where you are a good basketball team, make it happen. Make it happen. Now transitioning to the women's side of things where they are elite. They're a top 10 team even though the AP poll is kind of stupid and hasn't put them there yet. Our friend Allison Renner, shout out to Allison Renner on Twitter, she asked the true ceiling for K-State women's basketball. What do I think the key to achieving it is and what single factor prevents it? Now, it's pretty tough to pinpoint a weakness when you're on like a 12-game win streak, when you look as good as you do. Obviously, you lose the Duke early in the season, but K-State's at a point where the only noticeable lapses you'll see, you could always chalk up injury. That's always a thing. You can always chalk up getting boned by the officiating crew. You can chalk up this, that, or that, stuff that's just out of your control. You can say, okay, we run into a March Madness team of destiny type team. That can be an issue. The thing that I've seen at certain times, it's very, very hot and cold when you do see it, K-State has lapses where they cannot convert buckets from three. They're a really, really good team. They're incredibly sound. They've got Terrence Sides, who's an elite shooter, Tamira Poindexter, who is elite. Trust me, Serena Sundell is incredible. Jalen Glenn's been doing great things. There's a lot of different people to talk about. But K-State will go through a stretch of 5 minutes or 6 minutes where they're just ice cold around the hoop. Those could be my only question. Because I know Jeff Mitty trusts his guys. He's not going to call timeouts and say, okay, we need to do this and this and that. He's going to trust his people. At some point, I think that stuff could bite you. That would be the one thing that I think could prevent it. But I think the most crucial thing is just getting people in the rotation the right amount of time. I know how easy it is, and we'll talk about the men's team with this too, how easy it is to put someone on your bench and forget about them. even though they have good impact and can affect the game. Ayoka Lee's playing, season low in minutes for the last couple of years because she's kind of managing previous injuries or not trying to tire her out before conference play. Obviously, now we're 4 games in. But it's something that I think is interesting to know. Will Jeff Mittie continue this rotation the right way? Will they have to lose anybody for injury reasons? Will they have this or that? As it sits right now, this is a damn good team. A damn good basketball team, and you should absolutely be watching. If you're not, I enjoy it. They just make you feel better about Kansas State basketball. You feel like everything's going to be okay when you watch the girls' team, to be perfectly honest with you. But those would be my 2 picks. I think the most crucial thing is making sure you have the rotation right. You're playing people the right minutes. You're not exerting some people. You're not keeping people locked up too much. Those would be my 2 picks for what are the 2 biggest things. And converting buckets. I think Serena Sundell has been the perfect person to okay, team struggling from the floor. I'm going to get into the low block. She does a great job of posting up, even though she's the point guard. She has a good idea of, okay, I'm going to take my man, get down in the post. We're going to do our thing down there. She has some of those moments where it just settles things down, slows the pace, gets the girls firing back on all cylinders, and that's the stuff you love to see. So those would be my 2 picks there. Moving on to Pop-Tarts Enjoyer. Shout out to Pop-Tarts Enjoyer. What is going through ADGT's mind right now? So Athletic Director Gene Taylor, what's going through Hot Boy Gene's mind right now? This is a great question. So to tell you the truth, folks, I think there's 2 ways you could look at this with the Gene Taylor stuff. The one thing I would say is that Gene's not an idiot, folks. I don't think anybody should sit there and say he's just pleading ignorance on this fact and ignoring the lack of results, but Gene is also fiercely loyal to his guys. Coach Tang's his guy. I mean, that's the guy that weathered the storm after the Bruce Weber stuff, got him to where he thought, the program was in a better spot. We're not really at that spot right now. Doesn't look great. That being said, I think there's about as good of a 0% chance that Gene Taylor's thinking about firing Coach Tang this year than not. That being said, what will force Gene to make action, which sucks to talk about, because really you want the team to succeed. You want Coach Tang to figure it out. You want him to go back to the National Coach of the Year guy he was when he got here. But obviously it's a situation where it's looking more and more like Keontae and Marquise really backpacked that campaign, got that stuff off the ground. The thing, though, Gene Taylor would only make action or take action is when the attendance dies, when there's nobody in the stands, when the fan base is complaining, basically when the fans force him to take action. And I'm not saying we should, please don't mistake my words for what I'm saying. I'm saying Gene Taylor is going to back Coach Tang until he physically cannot, because he believes in him, wants to see the best from him. He's seen the highs, he knows him like that. The downside is that comes at a little bit of a time and place conversation where our patience is going to be tested. If the team keeps struggling like this, I don't know how many more games they win in conference play. They'll find a way to thug out 3 wins just because it's just K-State basketball. They'll beat KU at home. They'll lose to them by 40 in Lawrence. It's the way these things go. What's going through Gene Taylor's mind right now is, okay, this isn't great, and I'm sure he's talking to Coach Tang about changes that need to be made. I just don't think that he's thinking, hey, how do I get Jerome Tang out of town? That's not what he's trying to think about. Gene Taylor's trying to say, what can we do to make this basketball program good again? How can we fix this? What do we need to change? So I would say it's that, and then obviously football, he's not worried a second bit. But I don't know, man. I mean, it could be that, or it could just be like Marty Robbins' Ballad of a Gunfighter album just continually playing over and over in his mind, which would be pretty kick-ass, to be honest. So shout out Gene Taylor if that's the case. But my pick is that Gene's chilling. He's not happy chilling, but he's observing. That's what I think is going through Gene Taylor's mind. I think he's observing to see what the next steps are. Because Coach Tang, there's certain things he's right about, there's certain things he's wrong about. I just don't see Gene Taylor saying, all right, Jerome, we're, team 7-8 right now. Say they lose the next 5 and you're on an 8-game losing streak, whatever it is. I still don't think I sit there and say, okay, Gene Taylor's going to go out there and say, Jerome, you're done. You're staying in Lubbock, or you're staying in wherever we end up, you're not coming back with us. That's not how Gene Taylor works. There will be either a public renegotiation, there'll be some different conversations, there'll be staff changes. There's going to be a lot of things that could happen before it goes to Coach Tang specifically. So I would just say brace yourself. That's what I think is going through Gene Taylor's mind. I think he's bracing himself to see what the next best course of action is. Next question. Shout out to Marcus Foster's plug. Fire name, by the way. Fire burner name on Twitter over there, X. How do I pass the time the next football season? I have an option. Alcoholism would be my first pick. I mean, maybe not actually, and I'll expand on this, but drinking beer is good, man. Just drink beer, kill the time that way, be drunk until football season. That's what I'd say as the unhealthy coping mechanism, but a good way to also do it. I mean, I'm not going to be the guy that sits here and tells you that sports aren't everything, because I should not be the guy sitting here saying, oh, guys, just go outside and enjoy the weather and go for a walk and enjoy life. I'm not going to be that guy. There's a lot of people that would say that, and they're better than I am. What I will say is this. Baseball. Hear me out. I know people don't like baseball. I know a lot of people do like baseball. I've been kind of a fair weather baseball guy. Obviously, I'm a diehard Royals guy now, but I think that's also coming with the territory of working in sports media for the past 2 years, realizing how much I love the personalities and the people on this team. I watched the Royals lose 105 games 2 years ago, and I watched every single game just because. And that's the same thing to do with K-State. If we go completely defeated in conference play, unfortunately, I'll be there to watch all of them. Not in person because I'm in Minnesota, but I will thug it out and I'll watch it just because that's the way it goes, man. It's the way things go. I would invest in baseball. You could do college baseball. You could do professional baseball. Other than that, folks, stay tuned on the videos. I'm going to try to thug it out alongside with you guys all offseason, trying to get to the point, like, I've talked about this with some friends, like, this is going to be, complaining glass house situation here, so fair warning, but when you cover the team and you make like money off a certain thing, you make money off exposure, money off things, it is so much more like a kick in the nuts when teams struggle. Because you're at a point where like, I cannot sit here and make a video about Kansas State basketball, one, without being angry. That's not the biggest deal in the world. I could power through that. But I can't sit here and do that knowing, okay, the views are going to be down or the comment section will just be fire Jerome Tang. Neither of those do I want. Like, I can't make 80 videos in a row saying to fire Jerome Tang. That's not what I'm going to do. That's not my brand. That's not who I am. I also won't just try to beat a dead horse and say, this team, guys, they can get over the hump. They can. It's just the way where it's just like, this is not a team worth talking about right now. So with that, find a team that's worth talking about. Don't be the guy that's like, oh, I like Kansas State. I'm also going to like Texas Tech, or I'm also going to like Colorado, or I'm also going to like BYU this year. Iowa State's having a good year. Don't be that guy. Be the guy that like sticks true to your local team. So if you're a St. Louis guy, go to the Cardinals. Or, obviously the NFL playoffs will get us through the next couple of weeks, it'll get us to February. So when February starts, spring training for baseball is like February 21st, February 17th. That's what I'm going to do. It's actually something I've thought about on the channel is expanding coverage, because in a perfect world for my life, I want the channel to be kind of the three teams that I love. Kansas State, Chiefs, Royals. I love all three of them to death. I'm just as passionate about the Royals and the Chiefs that I am about Kansas State, if you could believe that. But I also don't want it to come at the expense of you guys where I'm like I'm handicapping you to say, okay, you have to watch 4 Royals videos to get 1 K-State video. I'm not going to be that guy. It'll be a 1-for-1 situation if I do that. But that's still a ways away. I'm not going to do it with the Chiefs because obviously it'd be kind of lame to start in the playoffs, I think. And that stuff all takes time because there's the juxtaposition of not getting views on certain things. And I think this relates to a lot of different ways to look at it. But when you're making content and you see the views are so much lower, how do you incentivize yourself to keep going? Knowing, okay, if I make a video talking about the transfer portal right now, as an estimate, it'll have 2,000 views. Name 3 different players, 2,000 views, awesome engagement, awesome comments, awesome likes, awesome everything. If I make a video talking about the Kansas City Royals right now or talking about the Chiefs right now, maybe has 50 views, maybe has 100 views from the residual people that tie over. This podcast is kind of an example where like less people want to watch a podcast, mostly because there's no video associated with this as well, but less people want to hear what I have to say in a 40-minute setting than they do on a specific topic. So shout out to you guys who are listening to this, but that's kind of the juxtaposition. That's kind of a long-winded way to say drink beer, watch the Royals, watch the Chiefs, find your team, do your thing, thug it out, sports bet. If you're not a fan, sports bet. Hockey is an incredible thing too. Shout out to Allison Renner on that topic. Huge Stars fan now. Got into hockey, die hard. Pick your team. I've embraced the Minnesota Wild because I live up in Minnesota. The literal second Kansas City gets a team, jump all in. And if you're not a fan, toss $20 down, watch a game, pick a random game on a Tuesday night, on Wednesday night. Baseball, hockey, whatever it is, NBA. Put $20 down on a certain team, sit there for the entire sporting event, and tell me you didn't have a good time. That's my theory. But, obviously it's not good legal advice. Like, don't sports bet your money away and drink alcohol. But those would be my 2 picks is have fun with your friends and family and then find a sport to cheer on for. Something to watch. Like, baseball has 160 games. Watch, 20 of them and you'll get through. Well, I guess the football season will be longer. But whatever. The point is, find something you like, enjoy it. All right. So, sorry, that was kind of a long-winded answer there. Shout out to Kelly in Vegas one time. Really big fan of Kelly and all the work she does. A queen of the sports betting industry on that topic. Like I said, find a sport you like. Speaking of which, real quick story about Kelly. Got intense into, I think it's lacrosse league. I think it's PLL. I could be wrong if I'm getting the league name wrong. But she went diehard on lacrosse, and she bet the heck out of it. She got really, really good. Was making a lot of money, going up a lot of units. And that's a new thing that got her through the offseason. I mean, obviously it's different timing, but like became kind of a queen of lacrosse, which is kind of funny. Professional lacrosse league. So I think it is PLL. Shout out to me if I got that right. If not, Kelly, I apologize. But Kelly asked a question, said, am I the only one that doesn't think we should fire Tang? Kelly, you're not. You're not the only one that thinks that. That being said, you are in a spot where saying it attracts attention to yourself in a, not a negative manner, but I mean, like, it'll bring the trolls, it'll bring the negatives, it'll bring everybody that you don't want to see respond to your tweet, it'll bring them out. It's the reason I don't make videos and say, hey, this team's going to be really good because this thing. Hey, if we just change this one little thing, it'll fix it. It's like, I don't want to make a video saying, I believe in Coach Tang. Not saying I don't believe in Coach Tang. Like, I believe in the man. I think he's a good dude. I think we can win basketball games with him as the head coach. There just needs to be changes. I don't think we should spend $18 million to buy out the contract of Coach Tang. I just don't. And I don't think it's going to happen. That being said, I don't know, man. I mean, it's such a crazy thing, but I do know for a fact you're not the only person that thinks that. I'm kind of just in the gray area right now where I'm like, I can go whatever way needs to happen to make this basketball program better in the long run. Not just like if you like, imagine this. Say we fire Coach Tang and gets a job, I was going to say Houston, thinking football for a minute, but say he gets a job somewhere in the Big 12 that's not doing so great. Most teams in the Big 12 are pretty dang good. Say, whatever, Bobby Hurley steps down at Arizona State, they hire Coach Tang, whatever, and he has a 10-year career where they're winning 800, like is a 800% winning percentage. That stuff happens. You make the wrong hire or you get out of a situation too early, you say, all right, get this guy out of town, we've seen enough, it's too long. I think at some point, there has to be a little bit of patience, and I'm not saying patience for us to be mediocre. I'm not trying to advocate to say, I embrace the mediocrity. I know that's a thing we want to talk about for a lot of people, but I just think there's a situation where it's like, whatever needs to happen to get better. If that's with Coach Tang at the helm or not, I'm for that. I'm for Kansas State. Whatever path gets Kansas State to the glory land, that's where I'm at. Let me keep that super general and be super lame about it, so I apologize. But no, Kelly, you are definitely not the only person that does not want to fire Coach Tang. I would think there's a lot of people that are in the boat where, hey, the buyout goes down every single year, so if you keep Coach Tang this year, see what happens in the portal next year, and if you don't like where you're at, start fresh, interim head coach, do whatever. But there's going to be a lot of people that are on the fence about both sides. I do think every press conference Coach Tang's been at, he hasn't exactly been removing the target from his back. That's the only thing. But that comes with time. That comes with media training. I get that. You're not going to crucify someone necessarily over their post-game comments, but he's definitely not making himself, what's the way to say this? He's definitely not making himself, like, irreplaceable in the eyes of the fan base. I'll say that. But that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking, and I appreciate you tuning in and all the hard work you do. Back to my guy, Zach. We talked about Zach Zumwalt earlier. Does starting off with Farmageddon force the offense to start off hot and open the playbook, or do you go to vanilla play calling to be like a typical FCS opponent? Sorry I butchered that. Brain's a little bit all over right now, but basically, do you open the playbook week 1 in the Farmageddon game in Ireland against Iowa State? Here's the thing I think. I think it's such a BS thing for teams to do to hold on to the playbook. Say, well, we don't want to do too much right now. Guys, let the dudes freaking play football. Let them go win the football game. You are in a point where you're on national television. You are the only football game playing in Ireland. You're the only single team that's playing that weekend. You're kicking off the season against Iowa State, one of your two rivals, in a new country where everybody's going to drink themselves beyond control. Like, you're in a spot where literally everybody in the world's watching you. I watched that at Florida State game. I didn't even want to watch Florida State football. Everybody wants football. It's at the point where, like, you watch preseason NFL football because you want the vibe back. The best thing you can do is win that football game. The best thing you can do is show a fun offense that guys want to play in, because that will get the most national reach of any game that's not a bowl game, or not a college football playoff game. Because I would argue those ratings beat a lot of bowl games this season through the bowl cycle. It's kind of one where it's like, if you want to market yourself incredible for the future ahead, hey, is Avery Johnson coming back? Hey, is Dylan Edwards coming back? Teams will see the way they play. They say, wow, dang, they're using their skill positions like this and this. I like the way they're using Lincoln Cure as a tight end. I like the way they have Dylan Edwards doing things out of the backfield. I want to play in that team. Do not BS your way through that game. Do not vanilla playbook it ever. There should be zero excuse to ever vanilla playbook it. Show your plays, man. It doesn't matter if guys have film on you. If you're going to be the best football team, you have to adjust to adversity. Don't give me the BS vanilla stuff. You won't beat Iowa State that way. That being said, I'm not the highest on Matt Campbell, but I don't think they'll be taking it easy by any means. They're going to open the playbook and try to win that football game because it will set you up. And the second part of Zach's question deals with that. Will it be more difficult to come back if you start with a disappointing loss? Yeah, I mean, you could say it that way. I don't think so. I don't think that's a situation that's going to be a unanimous across the board thing. Because Iowa State's a good football team. I mean, they could win 11 games next year. Let's be honest about that up front. That being said, you want to win that game. You want to start off hot. You want to get the win, get the monkey off your back for the Iowa State team that's kind of beat you around the last couple times. But I don't think it'd be more difficult. I think it's just a, hey, what do we do wrong? What do we do right? Let's go from there. If you lose the first 3 or 4 games, yeah, it's going to be difficult. But if I see somebody out there threatening to shove a burrito up their ass or say, hey, I'll eat dog poop before a team loses to Georgia Tech, I'm crashing out because I'm not dealing with a season-long curse where we win one football game, Florida State mode, awful. Not doing that. I'm not trying to see the tweets that are talking about DJU the way they're talking about Dak Prescott, saying, hey, we got a Samoan Dak Prescott. I don't need that in my life for Avery Johnson. Avery doesn't need that in his life. Let's go out there, open the playbook, get things done, take care of business. So great question, Zach, on that front. I appreciate you, brother. Moving on to Mousecat Cole, another one of my guys over on X, or Twitter. Sorry, I sounded like a D-bag there. College baseball outlook and expectations for the season. Now, college baseball is one where I'm still warming up to the full team because I was kind of out on Pete Hughes. Yeah, I know, bad take. He kicked ass last year. I think the team they had last year was so incredibly dynamic. This year, I feel like they've added some good pieces to the portal, but you're relying on guys like David Bishop, and you're relying a lot on the guys that were fringe stars, I would say. Maybe that's a disrespectful way to say that, and I apologize. But you need to rely on your guys to develop, and that's where we're at for Kansas State baseball. I think they had that kid from Texas that I'm really excited about in the infield, a couple different pitchers that should take another step forward. I think Tyrul, a couple other dudes, obviously lose a couple dudes in the MLB draft last year, but there's some good things there. I think we're going to be a good baseball team. I wouldn't expect to win the league this year by any means, but I could see a fourth-place finish, a fifth-place finish. We'll see what happens there. I think we'll make the tournament. I do. It could be a little dicey down the stretch trying to get to the tournament. That's what I'd say about Kansas State baseball, but I could be surprised too. Pete Hughes, I think, has really impressed me the last couple of years, the way he's turned things around after just getting kind of like smacked in the face by everybody. So he's at least figured out the recipe to get to college baseball postseason tournaments, and that I appreciate. Powercat Ryan, stay the course with Tang and hope he gets NIL support or use the men's NIL money to help buy out his contract. I don't think it works like that, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think you can kind of just reallocate resources there. I do know this. I think when you have as bad of a start as you do with top 5 NIL money, you're not going to have NIL money next year. I'll tell you that right now. I think you still thug it out with Tang. I think you do this year. You figure it out. You just got to put this behind you. And you see what he does in the portal, but it's going to have to be an entirely different approach. Like, you are not going to be a team that can spend $1 million on a player next year. Likely. Maybe they find some donors through the cracks here and there, but the way I look at it is this. TJ Otzelberger, if you've ever seen the stat, I know people hate TJ Otzelberger and stuff, and I was kind of, on that bandwagon for a little bit. He's a dang good basketball coach. He built a roster where each of his impact players played at UNLV, Curtis Jones, who played at Buffalo, who's averaging like 20 points a game, Deshaun Jackson played at Charlotte, Josh Jackson's a stud. Basically, everybody they picked up, I don't want to trash where they were, but they aren't guys that are transferred from Illinois. They're not guys that are transferred from Michigan. These are guys that played at D2 schools, like Northern Iowa. They have different guys around the team that's like, you can build a good basketball team with little to no money. Iowa State's NIL money isn't crazy. I know they got beat for a couple of different players, 2 teams they shouldn't have lost to in terms of prestige of the program, but they're at a point where they can recruit guys to play in their system because they know what they need. Kansas State needs a system. That's what I'd say. But it's going to completely flip everything. I think Max Jones is a guy that, he doesn't have another year next year, but the point of what I'm saying is you will find guys like that need to be diamonds in the rough. I think you keep Brendan Hausen. I think you may have a shot to keep Doug McDaniel. I would imagine probably not. Likely my pick is that you get 2 starters back. I guess maybe not starters, but you get 2 guys back at least in terms of Brendan Hausen, and I think you might get David Castillo back, see what you got there. But we'll see who you build around with, but you have to target the right guys in the portal. You can't just bring the big dogs in anymore. That's what's going to change next year. So, if it was up to me, I don't know, man. I'm going to ride it out, see what happens, because I think there's a way that you can get back to a good basketball team, but I do think there needs to be some changes in terms of, maybe the guys around Tang, maybe it's the assistant coaches, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's the team identity. There's things that need to change, and I won't discredit that by any means, but the entire offseason will have to look differently. Like, this is a masterclass of what not to do with $5 million. That's kind of the idea of what I've picked up on this season. Now, Wildcat Burner. Shout out to Wildcat Burner one time. The Portal Cats went hard on D. Are we looking at a repeat of 2022? Hell yeah, we are, man. Don't temper expectations, folks. Get your expectations up. I know that people want to look at it and say, well, guys, don't get your hopes up. Let's see what happens before they go out there and do this. You don't want to be disappointed. I would rather be disappointed, 6 times out of 10 if that meant 4 times I was right. Not because I'm going to be disappointed and say, okay, we're going 3-8 instead of 8-4. I can live with a disappointing season being 9-4. I can live with that. If that's disappointing, we're doing the right things. But get your damn hopes up. Think about the portal ads you've made. I think Gabe Powers is an elite linebacker. I think he's going to be a really, really good player for Kansas State. That linebacker room is going to be the best group in the Big 12. Austin Romaine, you get Des Purnell, you get Gabe Powers. I think that's going to be the best trio out there. The pass rushes. You add guys like Jason Ross. You didn't necessarily need Jason Ross, but you have a 4-star blue chip type recruit transferring to Kansas State to get after the quarterback. You got Toby Osensomni back. You got Chidi Obiaizer. You got Jordan Allen. All these guys on the D-line that are going to be studs. And then you look at the secondary. there were some issues in the secondary this year. I think you win a lot more games with a different secondary. Keenan Garber wasn't great. Marquise Siegel, for all it's worth, I think he's a dang good football player. I think he's also kind of one of the guys that screws up the miscommunication in the secondary where you have so many lapses last year. Now you have VJ Payne back there. He's the only returner in the safety room. Add Marquavius Moss, who was one of the underrated pickups in all of college football this portal season. Add Gunnar Maldonado, that I think is an immediate upgrade over anybody in that safety room. I think this is going to be a damn good team. Amarian Fortenberry can be a guy that can develop into an NFL star. I think a guy like Zayshawn Rich, it's kind of tough to say Zayshawn Rich and Jayshawn Ross without blurring the words there, but Zayshawn Rich showed some flash in that game. They really like what they saw out of Donnie Mack. I think there's going to be some really good players on the defensive side of the ball. If they go with that same system you saw in the Rate Bowl where they had that much misdirection on offense, this team's going to put up 40 on anybody and be tough to stop. So I would say get your hopes up. I think you're going to be a top 3 team in the Big 12 Conference. We'll see if you can win the close ones. We'll see what the schedule looks like. Those would be my pick on that question. So thank you for the question, brother. Rachel Kendrick, we've got a couple questions from real quick. What was my favorite K-State sports memory and then preseason MVP for next fall? My favorite K-State sports memory, and I try not to think of these in advance for when I talk about these with you guys, just so you can kind of get candid answers, because like if I premeditate my idea of what I'm going to say, then I feel like it's a little bit lame. That's kind of why whatever. But the point is like I try not to give you guys regurgitated stuff I've thought about all day. I kind of just want to go off the top. As of right now that I can think of, I think it was really, really cool to go out my senior year, my final semester of college with the Big 12 championship win. I remember watching the game in the dorms with friends. But the moment that I come back to every single time is in that March Madness run where K-State goes to the Elite Eight. Not necessarily the one in 2023, but the one in 2018 under Bruce Weber with Coach Weber. You had, I'm blanking on everybody. You had Dean Wade, who was banged up at the time. You had Cam Stokes, who was in a couple of my classes. Shout out to Cam Stokes. You had Barry Brown, who went superstar mode in that tournament. I remember watching the Kentucky game with my grandpa on the couch. I was at the Lake of the Ozarks helping out Splitting Wood, doing some stuff. They're both K-State grads, my grandparents. And Grandpa Joe and I sat there and watched the game and against Kentucky. And I remember we watched it together. And at the end of that game, I cried. I was just so overwhelmed on emotions that the team was able to deal with the adversity they did. I remember crying on the couch. And my grandpa, I love him to death, man. The sweetest man in the world. He's one of them named after. So Grandpa Joe sitting next to me. We'd also watched the 2015 Royals World Series together. He's a guy where like he'll watch an exciting game and then he can't sleep for the next 3 hours. So just lay in bed thinking about the game. It was one of those nights. And it's like being around someone you love in those settings where you can picture where they were, you can picture their facial expression, you can picture the couch, the TV. That stuff doesn't go away. So I remember that one. I think that's probably my favorite K-State sports memory. There's a lot of things I could kind of point out, but that one feels like the most special to me. I remember calling, I think it was one of Will Howard's first games as the starter, actually. That Texas Tech game where Skylar Thompson got hurt. I remember calling that game with my buddy Paxton at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. And it was a beautiful day. It was a little bit chilly, but it was so cool looking down on the stadium, seeing all the fans having fun, man. There's a lot of good memories like that maybe don't crack number one, but there's a lot of special things you can discuss. But that one feels like a pretty cool one. So shout out to Grandpa Joe one time, and thank you for the question there, Rachel. Preseason MVP next fall. I'm just going to say it, folks. It's going to be Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards is the key to this team. The O-line's going to be big because if the O-line's not doing their thing, Dylan might struggle. Avery really does hold the key. Like, he has to be the best player on this team. But if Dylan Edwards is making the plays he made in that bowl game, you are going to be so, so good. So I'm going to go with the not number one obvious answer, and I'm going to go with number two obvious answer, Dylan Edwards. I think Jace Brown's a close third in terms of that. If you want to give me a big three, it'd be some combination of Jace, Dylan, Avery, some combination of those three. I think it's probably Avery 1, Dylan 2, Jace 3. Could be a defensive player, but I think realistically it's going to be those three. But I'm going to go with Dylan Edwards. I think he's going to have a stud season next year and be a really, really great opportunity for Kansas State football in the transfer portal. Bringing a guy back home, always a cool thing to see. Moving on to the next question here from my guy, Thick Willie Burner. Top 5 beers / mixed bevs. Now, this one's one I could have probably thought about earlier. I didn't. I go back and forth, man, because, if it's cold, I'll drink it, man. I'll be honest with you. If it's cold, I'll drink it. That being said, I'm not the biggest beer dude. Controversial take. Hear me out. Nobody click off yet. Chill. I'm more of a seltzer dude than I am a beer dude because I feel lighter. I feel like I can drink 12, 13, Trulies, Claws, Quirks. Shout out to Boulevard Quirk one time, KC. I feel like I can drink 13 of those and don't feel like I just had a whole, salami sandwich in my body. That being said, if I had to go beers or mixed drinks, whatever the case is, number one, are you beating a margarita? Are you beating an ice-cold margarita, man? Give me a frozen strawberry marg. Give me some cheese dip. Give me like 4 strawberry margs, actually. It's got to be a good time. That being said, if you want a beer answer, give me Coors Light. The mountains are blue, I'm there, boys. What are we talking about? In terms of mixed drinks, I feel like there's a couple of different questions here, which way you want to go. I kind of just range it. In terms of a beer I do want to mention, which kind of toughly named right now, but Tang Party from Manhattan Brewing Company. Really like the sour taste. Really think that's a good one. It's kind of a seltzery beer, if I had to say, to be honest with you. Shout out to Manhattan Brewing Company. Love them a lot. But I go back and forth, man. Strawberry margs, there's nothing better than strawberry marg. There just isn't. My mom and I always drink strawberry margs together when I'm back home, and we're hanging out doing Mexican food. Love that. So let me give you an actual ranking list here. I'm just going to umbrella all seltzers into one, because it's kind of lame of me to highlight 5 different seltzers and be that guy. So because of the ease of access, seltzers are number 1 for you, boy. Number 2, ice cold marg. I think that's the play. 3, I'll do some combination of a Coors Light, of a, I don't know, man, you can give me a Modelo for all I care, something like that. I want a little bit of everything, but I think those 3 are probably top 3. Mixed drinks, it depends what you want to go with. If you want to be a Coke and rum type guy, a whiskey Coke type guy, I'm cool with that. That's totally fine. But it kind of ranges. I think if I wanted to go 4, it'd be some splash of I'm coming around a little bit more tequila these days. Maybe a little tequila, limes, straight, be all right, something like that. Or I could go with a little bit like a vodka and cranberry sauce. I don't know, man. I go a little bit of every way. I did recently have this, and I'll rank this number 5 because it's kind of a lame cop-out. But in this winter, my sister and her boyfriend live out in Jackson, Wyoming, so Jackson Hole. Got to go out and ski. It was really, really cool. He works at a bar there, pretty fancy. It's actually like a fine dining establishment. He works in the bar of that, and they have all these different alcohols. So we'll just make up all these fun drinks. I'll make one with like egg yolks or egg whites and frothiness, all this crazy stuff. But there's one drink he made where they had this fig vodka or fig liqueur, and it's got like a purple Maker's Mark. I should have mentioned whiskey neat, fellas. That's on me. Ice cold whiskey I've been growing on lately, but it's got like a Maker's Mark cap to it. It's like purple, like lavender purple, K-State lavender type purple. Mix that with some club soda. We're talking, man. We're talking right there. So a little bit across the board, a little bit everything, but hope I covered what you want. If not, that's on me. We'll talk about it next week. But moving on to the next question here for KSU Fan 99. What are some options we have in the next few years to improve our basketball performance? There's a couple ways you can look at this, folks. You could look at Coach Tang and say, are we going to be better if we fire Coach Tang? This season, you wouldn't be. There's no interim head coach on that staff that'll get this team to a better spot than what it is right now. Maybe that's not the truth. Sometimes teams will figure it out, but it just doesn't always work with interim head coaches. The ways you could improve. I'm just listing these. I'm not suggesting these in an order of hierarchy. You could change head coaches. That's one way you could potentially improve. I don't think it's going to improve you off the bat unless you make the right hire, which Gene's done in the past, but he's made a lot of good hires. But I would say the best way to improve. You have to attack the transfer portal entirely differently. Stop throwing your money at new players coming in through the transfer portal. Start throwing your money at guys that need to come back. Don't let Brendan Hausen out of campus. Don't let Doug McDaniel off campus. Don't let certain guys off this team. Keep Buddy Rich around. Let him start at the 3. I'm tired of him coming off the bench. Keep Buddy Rich in the game. He will average 15 points a night because he's that athletic. Get him to the point where he can play for 32 minutes a game. Build the team around him. I'm not saying bring a 3 and then they can shoot and do this and this and this. Play with the guys you have. That's what Coach Tang wants it to be. Make it happen. You're not going to have David Gasson. You're not going to have Coleman Hawkins. Max Jones will be gone. You have 2 guys in the starting lineup that could be here next year, and it'll be Doug McDaniel and Brendan Hausen. I think realistically what needs to happen, because I think Doug's going to leave. I just do. I could be wrong about that. Maybe Doug stays. Maybe they use their NIL money right. But if you keep Cam Carter this season, I think this team, instead of sitting at 7 and 8, granted it would affect the LSU game, so that one's kind of off the table. I think you win 4 more games. 4 of the games you've lost, I think you win. 3 of the games you lose, I think you win with Cam Carter. Because you need a natural scoring threat and somebody that can defend. Cam was getting up at 6'3", getting rebounds over dudes that are 7 foot. You need an athlete. But that guy could have stayed, could have wanted to stay. Probably averages 18 points a game this season as your best player. Him alongside a Doug McDaniel who can assist people like Keys can. Him alongside a David Gasson who's going to be the effort, heart, and soul of your team. Him alongside a guy like Coleman Hawkins that can do just about anything. You keep guys like that. You keep Arthur Kaluma. You're paying more money to guys on your team this year than you are to keep Arthur Kaluma around, who's averaging 18 a game at Texas, 15 a game at Texas. Just had 34 on the 3rd-ranked team in the country. I know that people were kind of on the fence. I was never advocating to get rid of Cam Carter or Tyler Perry. Excuse me, not Tyler Perry. TP graduated. I was never advocating for letting Cam or letting Art leave. I wasn't. Think about where this team would be if, I'm not saying in terms of Coleman, because Coleman's kind of his own position, so don't just cross it out. But obviously you wouldn't add Coleman if you had Arthur Kaluma. How many games better would this team be if your starting five looked like some combination of Doug McDaniel at the one, because TP graduated obviously, or Day-Day Ames? I mean, shoot, you keep Day-Day as well. You let RJ walk. You kept Buddy, which I cannot believe that Buddy willingly stayed. I'm pretty blown away that it worked out that way, but you need to play the guys that you want to keep here for the long term. Get Buddy 25 minutes a game, 30 minutes a game. This dude will average, he might have 3-4 personal fouls a game. He will also have 12, 15 points a game. I know you don't want to reward behavior for whatever the way it looks like. You don't want to always make, guys that don't deserve it or whatever the pitch he said about Doug McDaniel saying how it was an undeserved privilege. I know you don't always want to glorify that or justify it. Buddy Rich is one of your best players. He has the mismatch over just about anybody in the country that defends him. He will draw a foul and hit his free throws, or he will convert around the rim. If he has a bad play, keep him on the court. Let him learn through these things. That's how you keep these guys coming back. Not playing 4 minutes a game. Okay, one game he has a career high, 18 points. Next game he doesn't see the court. Do not do that type of stuff. So my theory is this. Your starting five next year will look like some combination of this. I know this is kind of a long-winded answer. I don't think you have Doug. I think you keep Brendan Hausen at the 2. I think you keep Buddy Rich at the 3. I think you add a 4. I think you add a 5. I think you're going to have to add 3 dudes to the starting lineup. Maybe you could keep Ugo around. I don't think he was too thrilled with what happened, but we'll see what happens there. My theory is that if you kept, how much better would this team be if you kept Arthur Kaluma and Cam Carter around? Look at their numbers and get back to me. That's a serious thought for all you guys, because I think we'd probably be 3 or 4 games better, because guys understand what it's like to play for multiple years in the same system. They develop. But when it's a first-year team of 10 different dudes every single year, you will not have congruency. You will not have consistency. I think you keep Cam Carter around. I think you keep Arthur Kaluma around. You win a lot of games. But I understand that's not the reality. I know that those guys left for their own reasons, so I'm not trying to knock the staff for that. It wasn't like they chose to let these guys go, at least entirely. I know it's a give and take to both parties have an opportunity on that. But let me move on from that. I think the best way to improve is just make changes in the transfer portal. The way you evaluate talent, go elsewhere for other people. Talk to other people that might be outside of the norm of who you normally look at in the transfer portal. Talk to others. Don't just go off the name and the brand and the value. Look at where they've been. Because Coleman's doing what he did at Illinois. Anybody that's saying Coleman's at fault is not right. Coleman's getting you 1 point less per game, 1 more rebound per game than he did at Illinois last season, and he was a second or third team All-American last season. He's doing what he was paid to do. You just have to add the right pieces. You have to find the right guys. Get them to be a team. You need somebody that can defend. Nobody in this team can defend, at least as of right now. I know they like C.J. Jones. Keep C.J. Keep these guys, man. I know that there's guys that won't be. C.J. may not average 15 points a game for you next year. He might not be on the court for 30 minutes a game, but he's someone in the locker room that understands what it takes to be a Kansas State Wildcat. If you keep him around, prioritize your guys you have here before going elsewhere. That's what I'd say. And obviously you couldn't do that last year because you lost just about everybody, but it's a give and take to all this. There's no high school freshmen coming into this next class, so you're kind of in an interesting spot for that. But because I'm getting a little bit too bent out of shape on this one, I'm moving on to the next question. There's a lot of ways you can get better. It takes time. Go to the drawing board, figure out where we're going first. Let's capitalize on that. Eli Scales 4, shout out to you for the question, sir. Will the Chicago Bears actually hire Matt Campbell? Where would ISU go if not? I'm going to tell you right now, they're not hiring Matt Campbell. And it's not because Matt Campbell doesn't deserve an NFL job. I personally would not be very happy if I was a fan of an NFL franchise that tried to hire Matt Campbell. Not because he's a bad coach, but just there's NFL Super Bowl champions out there that have no opportunities for head coaching jobs. Steve Spagnuolo is the greatest defensive coordinator who ever lived in Kansas City. If I chose a college coach over a guy that knows the ropes in the NFL, guys that's a known proven leader in the locker room, has an incredible defense, I would not be happy. I've seen they're interviewing Dan Lanning, and they're interviewing Marcus Freeman, and they're interviewing Matt Campbell, and this team, and this team, and this team. Everybody has a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator that's going to get a better shot than college coaches off the rip. I don't see them hiring Matt Campbell. I also don't want that for Matt Campbell. Not saying I want him to stay at Iowa State, but is Matt Campbell going to be the guy that would save the Jets or save the Bears? In the past 2 decades, who has saved the Jets? Who has saved the Bears? Nobody. And I'm not saying Matt Campbell couldn't do it. I'm just saying that there's just going to take some perfect person to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears, to be the head coach of the New York Jets. And I just don't see it being Matt Campbell. I think he's a good college coach. I think he could be an NFL offensive coordinator first, but going from college coach at Iowa State to the New York Jets feels like such a massive change of pace that I don't know that his lifestyle would want that. But my pick is no. I don't think they're going to hire him. I think they're going to end up hiring I think Chicago ends up hiring Ben Johnson. I think that's the guy they're going to go with. Aaron Glenn for the DC for the Lions as well. Steve Spagnuolo's got some interviews with the Raiders. We'll see what happens. I don't see the team going with them. I've said this on the last podcast. If I had money and I was an NFL head coach guy hiring somebody, or an NFL team franchise hiring somebody, I would throw all of my money at Dan Lanning. Then I'd go from there. That's the college coach I want to make the jump. And maybe final 2 questions here. I got one as we're recording this, so I'll try to come back. Junior 92, do you see us signing another tackle in the portal? Junior, I do, my friend. I actually do. I know K-State's going after George Fitzpatrick from Ohio State. Roommates with Gabe Powers. We'll see what happens there, but I do know they're going after it, so we'll see what happens there. I think they're going to sign another tackle. Will it be this portal class? Will it be the spring portal class? What's the situation going to be? I think it happens. I think they add another tackle. But if not, Andrew Langyang, roll with the guy, get it figured out. The final thing, I guess I've kind of already wrapped this up. How can we better approach the transfer portal for basketball this spring? From Donnie Diesel. Good question, man. I've done a lot of my... I'm going to toot my own horn here and try not to sound like a jerk. This year, I did a lot of scouting. I did a lot of research, did a lot of stuff, put spreadsheets together, got rosters together, tried to add where people were going, did all my own thing, had my own way of looking at it. There was a couple dudes that stood out to me. And the main knock was like, well, they're not going to do that at D1 basketball. The one guy that was like near the top of my list, and I'm like, they need to take a look at this guy if you're a Power 5 school, was Elijah Malone, the center for Colorado. And that name may not ring a bell, but let me just read you his stats real quick and where he played at the previous year. Elijah Malone is a big dog, like looks like a big dog. Last season in college basketball, did not play D1, did not play D2. He was like MAIA level college basketball. And he was the player of the year. In like 24 minutes, averaged like 30 points a game. This year, he's a 6'10" senior, weighs 268 pounds, plays for Colorado, averages 10, 3, and 1. I know that's not great, but he's shooting 61% from the field, looks good, looks like a guy that belongs in D1 basketball. How much money do we think Colorado paid him? That would be my question. I would beg to differ. It was probably less than $200,000. For reference, how much do you think K-State paid any of their starting 5? I would imagine it's probably more than that. That being said, I could be wrong. These are all just speculative numbers because I don't know the numbers. But they need to stop looking at as much at portal rankings from 24/7 Sports on 3. You need to do your own research, and I know they do. Like, I know they added Tyreek Smith, a guy from Memphis they seem to like. And there's a couple guys here and there that they want to roll with. But you need to find your own algorithm. You need to find your own guys that fit that. For a while, they've done this thing where it's like, we want winners, guys that have won in high school. Get guys that have won in college, but they don't have to be a Coleman Hawkins that's won in college, where he's played at the biggest university for Brad Underwood for the last, X years, turned into an All-American. We don't need that type of athlete every single year. I love Coleman. I'm glad he's on the team. I think he's a good player for Kansas State. But you're using a lot of money on resources for guys that may not make as much of an impact in the future. So I look at it and I say, you found one with Max Jones. You found a great guy for the team. I know Max has struggled to convert, but I like the impact he's had. He's got a natural shot. He's a good player. That's an underrated gem you found. I think Moby has that cracked up. I also should have mentioned, I think Moby sticks around next year. I don't think he'll play as much, but I think Moby will stick around next year because he's an athlete. If he develops, he'll be a star. I just think it's finding the right guys at the right levels. I don't know how you do that. I don't know if it's an in-person thing. You meet the guys, you see them, you need to see them in a certain context. I get what you're looking for, but it's just who is going to be that guy. Because the guys you missed on, there's some guys around the country that you would have liked to have. It didn't work out for whatever reason. Maybe it's the staff, maybe it's elsewhere, maybe it's the player. There's a lot of different, casualties, different things that happen every single season. You need to figure out what your algorithm is for evaluating these guys. I know they have one. I'm not trying to sit here and say they don't. I'm just saying that whatever they did this season did not work, and that sucks because we are like 15 games into the season. We're 4 games into conference play, and we're already sitting here saying, well, this didn't work. This team isn't right. So whatever that is, that's the final question of the show. It's kind of a disappointing note to finish on, but I do want to say I appreciate all of you who supported the last episode, who checked it out. Thank you all for asking questions, comments, concerns. If you like the pod, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit a like button, whatever you want to do. I appreciate each and every one of you who do. But that's pretty much going to do it for today's episode. If you want to be on the next episode, hit me up on Twitter when I ask these next round of questions. If you're interested, I'd always appreciate having it. But guys, thank you all for all the support. Once again, thanks to everybody who did ask a question. And I will talk to you in the next one, guys. Go Cats.